Hey everyone, and welcome back to Boss Economic World, where we slice through the jargon, call out the nonsense, and figure out what's really going on with your money. So, let me paint you a picture. It's November 18th, 2025. The air in Atlanta is getting crisp, the holidays are around the corner, and Aisha Jones is standing in the middle of a construction site. 412. Straight. Hours. Her job? Holding a sign that says stop or slow. She's what they call a traffic flagger. She's braving the southern sun, the exhaust fumes, and the occasional driver who thinks the rules of the road are just a friendly suggestion. Not too long ago, this was a job people took when they were out of options. A tough gig for tough times. But today, in late 2025, something has changed. The company she works for, AQC Traffic Control, used to get maybe 10 applications a week. Today? They're getting up to 80. The CEO, a guy named Marcus Rush, says his phone used to ring with new customers. Now, every time it buzzes, it's a desperate job seeker. Hey, just checking on my application. How did we get here? How did we go from the Great Resignation, that glorious, chaotic era of 2021 and 2022 when everyone was rage-quitting their jobs on TikTok for a 20% pay bump and a fully remote gig, to an economy where people are lining up for the privilege of getting a sunburn for minimum wage? The mainstream news will give you a single, boring headline: U.S. labor market cools. Yawn. That's like describing a tsunami as an unusually large wave. Here at Boss Economic World, we don't do boring. We restore the full picture. So grab your popcorn, because this is the story of the Great Resignation's nasty hangover. It's a tale of a nervous Fed, terrified companies, and how the power in the economy just did a complete 180. This is the Great Settle. To understand the pain of 2025, we have to rewind the clock. Let's jump in our economic DeLorean and go back to 2021 to 2022. Ah, what a time to be alive. The government had just fire-hosed the economy with stimulus money. You probably got a check. Your cousin who trades crypto from his mom's basement got a check. Everybody got a check. And with all that cash sloshing around, and everyone being cooped up for a year, we all went on a collective spending spree. We wanted new cars, new Pelotons, new houses in the suburbs. Demand went through the roof. And what do businesses do when demand is high? They hire. They hired like crazy. Suddenly, every LinkedIn message was from a recruiter promising you the world. Unlimited PTO. Wellness stipends. Come work for us, we have kombucha on tap. This created a historic power imbalance. For the first time in a generation, the worker had the boss over a barrel. We called it the Great Resignation. People were job hopping every 6 months. The average wage gain for someone who switched jobs was pushing 8, even 10%. From the start of the pandemic to the peak, overall wages shot up by a whopping 27%. It was a party. A glorious, chaotic, wage-fueled party. But, as anyone who's ever had one too many tequila shots knows, every party is followed by a morning after. And in economics, that morning after is called inflation. The Fed has one primary job: keep prices stable. When inflation hit 9% in mid-2022, alarms went off in their big marble building in Washington. They had to cool things down. They had to end the party. And how do they do that? By making money expensive. From 2022 through 2023, the Fed went on the most aggressive interest rate hiking campaign in 40 years. They were basically turning up the difficulty setting on the entire US economy. Think of it this way: when interest rates are low, a company thinking about building a new factory can borrow money cheap. It's a no-brainer. They build the factory, they hire workers. The economy grows. But when the Fed jacks up rates, that same loan becomes incredibly expensive. The CEO looks at the numbers and says, "Whoa, forget it. The math doesn't work. Scrap the factory. Freeze all hiring." This is exactly what happened. The Fed's rate hikes acted like a slow-acting poison, seeping into every corner of the corporate world. For a while, it seemed like they might pull off a miracle, the so-called soft landing, where they tame inflation without causing a recession. The job market held up surprisingly well through 2023 and even into 2024. This led to a weird economic purgatory that analysts dubbed the low-hire, low-fire economy. Companies were too scared to fire the workers they had fought so hard to get during the Great Resignation. But they were also too spooked by high interest rates to hire anyone new. It was a standoff. A staring contest between employers and the economy. But here in late 2025, that staring contest is over. And the employers just blinked. Or rather, they've stopped blinking and are now staring with cold, calculating eyes. The low-fire part of the equation is officially dead. Which brings us back to Atlanta, and our friend Marcus Rush, the CEO of the traffic flagging company. Now, get this isn't some guy who inherited the family business. Marcus Rush graduated from Stanford with an MBA in 2020. He's a card-carrying member of the business elite. A year later, he bought AQC Traffic Control. And now, this Stanford MBA is witnessing the economic downturn from the front lines. He's gone from 10 applicants a week to 80. He used to hire pretty much anyone who could pass a drug test. Today, he's only able to hire about 15% of the people who apply. He literally chuckled when a reporter told him he's now almost as selective as Stanford's first-year admissions office. Let that sink in. In the 2025 economy, it's nearly as hard to get a job waving a stop sign in the blistering heat as it is to get into one of the most elite universities in the world. If that doesn't tell you the power has shifted, I don't know what will. And this isn't just about traffic flaggers. The desperation is spreading to all the jobs that were once unshunnable. Take substitute teachers. Remember Danielle Norwood? She's 53, a radio veteran who got laid off last fall. After a tough stint driving for Uber and sending out countless resumes into the void, she's now getting certified to be a substitute teacher. She's heard the horror stories, kids with no boundaries, one sub who got kicked in the gut. But the pay is okay-ish, and as she put it, financially, this is the only way I can see forward. Staffing firms that supply subs to schools are seeing their best hiring years since before the pandemic. Why? Because a weak economy is pushing people like Danielle, professionals with years of experience, into classrooms out of necessity. The story is the same everywhere you look for jobs that are physically demanding, unpleasant, or inconsistent. Recycling centers, the places where people still have to sort your messy recyclables by hand? 3 years ago, staffing firms said it was darn near impossible to fill those roles. Now, applications per opening are up as much as 50%. Prison guards, the Georgia Department of Corrections is getting over 1,000 applications a month, up 40% from a year ago. It's a notoriously high turnover, high stress job, but people are applying in droves. The military, this is the classic canary in the coal mine for the job market. When good civilian jobs are scarce, enlistment goes up. In 2022, the Army missed its recruiting goal by a staggering 25%. Now, in 2025, they and other branches are hitting their targets ahead of schedule. When joining the Army seems like a stable career move, the private sector is shaky. Even at big, established companies, the dynamic has flipped. Waste Management, the garbage collection giant, is bragging on its earnings calls that turnover for drivers and technicians is at an all-time company low. Translation, people are clinging to their jobs because they know there's nothing better out there. The job-hopping party is definitively over. Now, the anecdotes are powerful, but this is boss economic world, so we need to look at the data. The government will tell you the jobless rate was 4.3% in August. That doesn't sound so bad, right? Wrong. The headline unemployment number is the movie poster. It looks exciting, but it doesn't tell you the plot. The real plot is hidden in the details. Detail number 1, the duration of unemployment. Almost 26% of unemployed workers right now have been out of a job for more than half a year. 26%. That's one of the highest shares in a decade, outside of the pandemic's initial shock. This means people aren't just losing jobs, they're staying unemployed. The game of musical chairs has stopped, and there are way more people than chairs. This is the low-hire economy biting back. Companies aren't creating new spots, so if you lose yours, good luck finding another. Detail number 2, the confidence crash. A recent Harris poll for Bloomberg News dropped a bombshell. They asked employed Americans, if you lost your job today, how long would it take to find a new one of similar quality? Nearly half said it would take 4 months or more. That's the fear factor. That's the end of the Great Resignation mindset. The swagger is gone. The feeling that you could walk out of your job on Monday and have a better one by Friday has been replaced by a gnawing anxiety. This fear gives employers all the leverage. They don't have to offer kombucha on tap anymore. They can offer you the job, and you'll take it. Detail number 3, the wage stagnation. And what happens when employers have all the power? Wage growth evaporates. While we don't have the final 2025 numbers yet, all signs point to wage growth slowing to a crawl, maybe 2.5% or 3%. With inflation, even at the Fed's target of 2%, that means your real wage growth is basically zero. The days of getting a 20% raise by jumping ship are a distant, beautiful memory. You're lucky if your salary keeps up with the price of milk. So, let's put it all together. What is the real story of the 2025 labor market? It's not just a cooling. It's a fundamental power shift, engineered by the Federal Reserve and executed by nervous corporations. 2021 to 2022, the Great Resignation. Workers had the power. Wages soared. Inflation followed. 2022 to 2024, the Great Standoff. The Fed hiked rates. Companies got scared. They stopped hiring but were too scared to fire. Low hire, low fire. 2025, the Great Settle. The standoff is over. The cumulative effect of high interest rates has finally broken the back of the labor market. Layoffs are ticking up, and the fear of unemployment is back. Workers are no longer job hopping, they're job clinging. They're settling for jobs they wouldn't have looked at twice 3 years ago. The irony is breathtaking. The very policies designed to curb the inflation caused by a hot labor market have now created a situation where experienced professionals are competing with dozens of others for jobs as substitute teachers and traffic flaggers. And the ultimate symbol of this new era is Marcus Rush, the Stanford MBA. He used his elite education to buy a blue-collar business, and now he's presiding over an applicant pool so competitive it rivals the one he came from. He thought he was buying a simple traffic control company, but he accidentally bought a front-row seat to one of the most dramatic economic shifts of our time. So when you see that headline that says the labor market is normalizing, you'll know the real story. It's not normalizing. It's a pendulum that has swung violently from one extreme to the other. We've gone from take this job and shove it to please, sir, I want some more. The big question now is, what's next? Will the Fed, seeing this weakness, be forced to start cutting rates again in 2026? And if they do, will that just reignite the inflation monster they worked so hard to slay? The great economic seesaw continues, and you can bet the ride is far from over. That's the full picture. Thanks for watching Boss Economic World. We'll see you next time.